Welcome to this episode of Deconstructing the Culture. Today we have special guest Doug Johnson. A little bit about Doug. He is the husband of pro-life leader and advocate Abby Johnson, who is the real-life story that was portrayed in the movie UNPLANNED that was released last year. Y'all know, if you've been listening to my podcast or following my page for a minute, I was a huge advocate of the show. So bringing Doug on the show and talking more about UNPLANNED and his pro-life life with Abby is awesome, especially for y'all because you've been on this journey with us. He's currently actually a stay-at-home dad to 8 children. That is huge and a lot of work, so we're going to talk about that. They range from 13 to 9 months old, including 1 adoption and a set of twins. So he's got his hands real full at home. He began his vocation as a SHAD, stay-at-home dad, in 2011 after 5 years of being a high school special education teacher. Along with being a proud Texan, born and raised, Doug has a passion for all things faith, family, and friends. His goal is actually to redefine what it means to be a family man and a provider, which I think is so needed in today's day and age where we are making masculinity about toxic masculinity, but he is redefining that to what it was supposed to be, which is beautiful and God-designed. Through building stronger families and serving smaller communities, we can change our culture for the better by radiating our values from the inside out to the world. In 2014, Doug began writing for several blogs, including his own called Doug on Tap, which I highly recommend you check out. I don't usually say that in podcast interviews, but Doug is hilarious. I followed him out of interest at first just to see what that was all about, the other side of Abby, and realized that Doug is amazing and special all on his own. He more than holds his own in the humor world. Since then, Doug has been sharing his stories about the joys and challenges of parenting, marriage, and all the fun things that come with supporting a strong woman in the pro-life movement, all with a sense of humor and compassion. Doug's interests include craft beer, building project and woodworking, pro wrestling, trips to the movies, and cooking. But nothing makes him happier than traveling to new and exciting places with his wife. Welcome, Doug Johnson. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, right. It's about time. I feel like we've talked so much on social media. We've never been face to face.
That's true. That's
so
true.
Here we are talking, and I can't wait to actually meet you and give you a hug and get to know you more.
Yeah, me too. I think you're going to be at the Pro-Life Women's Conference this.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I have a ticket. I'm pretty sure I'll be there, so we'll see. See if the stars align.
Bring your husband. We'll hang out.
That's true. I know. I want to bring my
husband.
husband.
Either.
It's hard to pull him out of the ministry world sometimes, but I'd love to bring him at some point.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to dive right in with a hard question. So I hope you're prepared.
I am.
This is a tricky one. Now, on the Conservative Babes podcast, Deconstructing the Culture, we frequently do talk about dating and relationships. And I feel uncomfortable kind of sharing this. That's why it's a tough question for both of us. But one of the number one pieces of advice that I give to young people in the dating world is do not marry someone who doesn't share your values. And that means pro-life, pro-gun, pro-God. Now, I'm just being totally upfront with you. So I totally want you to be completely honest and upfront with me right back. But in that light of that's what I tell my young audience. Obviously, you have a lot more marital experience than I do. You've been married for a very long time, whereas I'm like, less than 3 years into this. What would you say? And also, what was that like marrying, for those who may have not watched UNPLANNED, what was it like marrying a woman who was pro-abortion and worked in the abortion industry and you yourself were pro-life?
It was tough and very conflicting. I would not advise anybody to take my route. I think your advice is perfect, on the nose. Sometimes you fall in love to the point of there's no more deal breakers. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So, I think most people know that Abby was married before me. And I was actually at that wedding. I was a guest and had a date at her first.
I did not know that. Wow.
We met, I would say our friendship really started on 9/11. Actually, we'd known each other a little bit. We worked for the same company, but at different locations. Then her first full day at my location, it was at a glass shop, Acme Glass. And we'd both taken about 3 years off of school. So it was like, we were in the middle of that like break from college, just trying to figure out what we wanted to do with ourselves. And she was going to go and get married. And that day was like the first full day we ever spent together. And we became fast friends. And she invited me to her wedding. It was we met like 3 months before her wedding. She's like, you know what? I'm giving you an invitation. I want you to be there, and I like you that much. And so I went. And then what was nice about her being married was that there was no opportunity for romance. So Abby and I had the opportunity for at least a year to really get to know each other without dating. It was just becoming friends. Okay, so there was that like friendship love that kind of developed between us, and we were very close. There was only three of us that worked in this at this glass shop, just me, her, and another man, and we worked 48 hours a week together. It's kind of hard to. You're either gonna really like each other or hate each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit of both, And so whenever her first husband left, there was a change and shift in her friends, and my friends just kind of adopted her into my group, and that was kind of where I guess the romance started to bud there. But like I said, we didn't talk a lot about abortion. Whenever when she would describe her first abortion as a miscarriage, she did tell me she'd been pregnant once before, but she always talked about it as a miscarriage, not that she got an abortion. And
Oh.
the only time we talked about an abortion was another girl that worked with us was actually, I think, a roommate of Abby's at the time. She did get an abortion, and Abby, she was like, she would never tell a woman what not to do, but she felt like it was not okay for this woman to use abortion as a form of birth control. And I was just devastated that a person I knew was going in there to get an abortion, and I couldn't stop her. And I was probably 22, 23 at the time. I think Abby was about 21-ish.
Okay.
So we're about 2 years apart in age. And so, again, our friendship just developed over time. And I guess, we just kind of fell into dating. It just kind of happened. I don't remember. I couldn't tell you our first date because it wasn't really a first date. There were probably had 1,000 technical first dates just hanging out. And that's another thing I would tell young people in dating is go out in groups. One-on-one dating will get you in trouble. Try to hang out with friends and get to know each other that way before you do the one-on-one stuff, and know where you're headed. Like, hey, we're dating, and this is with the intentions of meeting a spouse, not just having fun and feeling each other out. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's
okay,
that's probably
perfect.
my number two dating advice is I don't think teenagers should date at all. You should really be late 17, early 18 before you even consider dating, and you really should be in group settings. One-on-one, it just leads to too much temptation without the real chance to get to know each other.
Right, exactly. And then you get to see how you interact with other people and that sort of thing, and it kind of takes away the awkward tension that can come with if you don't know what you're doing. Anyway, so back to the thing with Abby. I guess I'm probably giving a whole lot of detail here, but I think it was just, again, we kind of fell in love to the point where like there were no deal breakers to be had. And so even when she had the second abortion, and I was privy to that, I don't know, I guess my heart went out to her with what she had to go through. And she didn't want to accept my help. And I felt bad that she didn't have a man, her ex-husband, to there was no support, and she didn't feel like she could go to her parents or anything like that. And really, it was probably because it was never discussed in her home, and her parents, not not shaming them, but they didn't make her feel like she had a soft place to land, where she actually did. She could have easily gone to them with her problem or with this crisis pregnancy, and she would have gotten all the support she needed. She would have gotten it through me. And I guess I tell people, like, you can't play the what if game. Like, oh, I wish she hadn't had the abortion, because then it's like, like as a sci-fi nerd, you're like, what does that do to the timeline, right? Do I
Yeah.
not get my 8 kids now? Am I not happily married to Abby Johnson? Or does she not become Abby Johnson? Is she Abby something else with somebody else? But I mean, I wish, like, if she had had those other 2 children and everything could happen exactly how it happens now, I really think those children would have loved being a part of this family. But so I can't wait for our kids to meet their brothers and or sisters, when we get to heaven, and assuming we do, and like we play our cards right and all.
No, I understand what you're saying. So, I mean, this is probably a little far out there, but I mean, how would you guys react if any of your kids ended up falling in love with someone who is pro-abortion? Would you say, maybe over time in prayer you can have a similar story to us, or would you kind of harshly advise against that? I ask mostly because not to be nosy or put you in a tough situation, question wise, but because this is a real question over and over I get from our audience is, what do I do? I am so in love with this person, or, what do I do? How do I go about this? How important is it?
I think, yeah, and you ask them the questions that you feel like they aren't asking themselves. Like, so in the future, say one of my boys grows up and is in the same boat I'm in, and it's like, do you trust whether or not she would abort one of your children without you knowing? Or
That's a harsh
and
reality.
for me, when Abby and I were dating, we discussed that, and Abby just kind of brought it up, and she's like, you know, I know we're headed towards marriage, and I know if we got pregnant before we got married, because yes, we were having premarital sex. She ruined me, it was and so, but she told me, she's like, I know that you would be a good dad and be supportive, and I think that's something that's probably a big reason why women are walking into abortion clinics is I guess they're setting themselves up for failure by hooking up with these men that they don't trust will be there for them. And maybe their dad wasn't there for them. So that even if that man would be there for them, they just don't trust them. You know
Mm,
what I mean? So I think men have developed this horrible reputation of womanizing and not wanting to be fathers, and not knowing what commitment is, and not even looking into if you're committed to each other before jumping in the sack with someone. And honestly, you don't know if you're committed until you got that ring on your finger and you're married. And that's a pretty good indication that, okay, we're in this for the long haul, and I can
yep.
trust you, if we have an unplanned pregnancy or a planned pregnancy or whatever. So no,
Yeah.
I would tell my boys, like, I would ask them, well, what do you think would happen in this situation? Have y'all discussed this? And hopefully lead them in the right direction instead of telling them like point blank, no, you need to break up with this girl. And if it was my daughter dating a boy that was like that, I'm like, are you sure this is the guy you want to be with? I mean, like, do you want a family? If he doesn't want a family, then you really need to think about that. Like,
Yep.
you got to be on the same lines. And Abby always thought she was one and done. It's in the movie, and here we are, 8, and who knows, right? So
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. No, it's a really great answer, and I really appreciate you answering those kind of tricky questions, because I think as
I don't
you know,
mind, because we are very unique.
yeah,
I mean, outside looking in, people cannot wrap their head around it, and I can't even say that I can wrap my own head around it. I still constantly ponder it all the time, and I guess I'm trying to come up with the perfect answer, and there really isn't one. I don't have one. I just have our love story, and like I can tell you what was going through my head at certain times. I may not have known it at that time, but looking back, I can definitely reflect on it more.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's
even just looking at it from an outsider looking in, you can tell it was God ordained. Obviously, God always has a plan. He knows what
right.
he's doing. The hand of God is clearly on your marriage and both of your all's life story. But switching tracks just a little into fatherhood, being a stay-at-home dad. Again, I'm just going to say it like it is. You guys being part of the pro-life movement, you guys run in probably very conservative circles, and your social media following is probably very traditional conservative, meat and potato Christians. And part of that is, I wonder, do you get backlash for being a stay-at-home dad, and do you get criticism, or is it fairly well supported in your guys' group? What is that like to be a stay-at-home dad and to kind of reverse what the typical Christian might say is ideal?
Okay, well, at first, like with my dad and my grandfather, they didn't get it. They had to have a few conversations with me. They were like, no, you should be out there, like, bringing home the bacon. That's what a man does. And I told them, I was like, you have to redefine. I had to do this. It took me about a year or two to figure out, well, what does a provider do? Does it have to be a paycheck? Or do I teach my kids how to change oil, change tires, what it means to maintain a home, that laundry, cooking, and cleaning does not know gender. Like, I didn't grow up in a home where my mom did all the chores. Like, my dad worked outside, my mom worked inside. They shared it, they switched. My mom taught me, like, I started vacuuming the house when I was in kindergarten. And I was folding and doing laundry well through elementary school. And then probably when my dad trusted me enough that I wouldn't cut my foot off mowing the grass, that's when I started doing those kind of chores. And
Yeah.
so I learned how to do everything that came with maintaining a home at a very young age, and I was never taught that that has a gender role. And so, and I guess I had to explain to my parents that, like, look, Abby's been called. Like, this is like God has like tapped her on the shoulder and said, I need you to go do this. Like, I need you to share your story and your witness and your testimony. And she got swept up. And I think God tapped me on the shoulder and said, I need you to take care of her while she does this. I need you to love her as Christ loved the church, and that sort of, and like really just maintain her and make sure she has a good home to come home to and decompress and rest, and she has a family life so she can disconnect from that world and come back. Because I can't do what she did. I can't go out there and tell her story for her. I didn't have all of those experiences. I know about them, but I can't tell her story for her, and so I can't really comment on that the way she can. So of course, she's the one that has to go out and do that. So when, yeah, there are Christian men that say it's wrong, and she's doing a disservice to our children, she should be around more. And I'm like, I'm here. You know, nobody would ever say that to a man that travels for work. Nobody
No,
would ever say that. They'd be
no,
like,
they would not.
that's a sacrifice your family makes, and it's wonderful, it's beautiful. But because she's a woman, there's this very much a double standard. I understand men and women are different, and their roles as parents are different, but you still adapt.
Yep. No. And honestly, I would say that to be honest, I think it shows a security in your calling as a man and in your manhood, as our culture would put it. Because I come from, and my audience knows this, and I know we've talked about it too, just in individual conversations. I come from a polygamous fundamental background, which is very, very male chauvinistic. I mean, to the point where I personally view it as like a Bible beating your wife over the head. The woman
Right.
is basically the slave and another child under her husband. So I've seen the extreme other side of
I just listened to one of your shows where I forget who you're talking to, but you're talking about the whole submissive thing. Women be submissive. And it was like, no, that's a dirty word where I come from, because submission was like full submission, almost slave like. And that's not what God asked or Christ asked from us at all.
no,
So,
absolutely not.
yeah.
But anyways, I fully agree with where you're at. I know, without getting too specific, there are dear family members whom I love who refuse to change a diaper because that's woman's work. So to see a man who fully has embraced God's calling for him to be a spiritual leader, and for you to provide and care for your family in whatever capacity that looks like, I think it's beautiful, and I think it's amazing.
Well, I think our kids see us and they see what we're doing and they see our service to them and they mimic it to each other. Like, I can't tell how many times I found stuffed animals tucked into their beds or put in their car seats, or they're pretending to change their diaper. And it's because they watch Abby and I do it. And I think seeing a man do it, like when I drop my kids off at school, they go to a private school. There's only 2 male teachers there, and they're, of course, the PE teachers and math teachers. But every morning, they're there at the drop-off line, opening the doors, letting the kids in. The first people they see before they walk into school is usually the 2 men that work there, and they see them in a job of service, right? And I think that's important to see men like high-fiving, hey, glad to see you at school today, we're gonna have a good day, and instead of like teachers are always women, which, they're nurturing, but I think the pump you up, hoorah man thing is kind of fun too, not in a toxic way, but like in
No,
a very positive way. And so
exactly.
that's also like going back a little bit. When people say, hey, you're Mr. Mom, I don't care for that joke. My kids call me dad. I'm not Mr. Mom. I'm dad.
Because you're not replacing Abby. You're not replacing
No,
a mother. You are a
that's
strong father figure.
they have a mom, and that she's Mrs. Mom. I'm Mr. Dad. And that's why I don't say stay-at-home parent. I say I'm a stay-at-home dad, because I do dad things just like dad things should do. And I know there's a umbrella of parenting, but then there's a mom side and a dad side, and there is a difference. Again,
There
I
is.
know we're unique and we kind of blur the lines, but that's our story to tell, and so that works for us.
And your children are well loved and well cared for. Real quick, actually not real quick. This is another one of those deeper questions. Speaking of kids and teaching kids and raising them up, how do you decide when and what to tell your children about abortion? So I know your oldest, Grace, would know what abortion is. She was at the Unplanned movie premiere, and
Yes.
obviously she was in the movie as well. So she got to see that. So she, clearly knows her mom's history and her past in being part of Planned Parenthood. What about your other children? How much do they know about abortion? And as a dad, when do you think is an appropriate time and way to explain what abortion is to children?
I think a lot of parents get nervous, and you kind of have to fill your kids out. You know your kids better than anyone else, right? And so I can't say, oh, there's a specific age or a time, but I think they'll bring it up and let you know when they're ready to talk about it. I think what happens is a lot of parents are like, they're uncomfortable with their children asking those questions. And they're like, ooh, I don't think you're ready. But just them asking is a pretty good hint or clue that they're ready. And I think with Grace, the way it came up with her is we took her to the March for Life in DC when she was probably about 4 or 5 or 6, somewhere in there. And she saw, we don't like graphic signs at all.
Yeah,
We're not,
no, I'm on the same page with you.
They have their place, but they're not in public, and not at the March for Life where everybody agrees with you. Come on now. And so anyway, she saw one of those signs. She looked over, she tugged on Abby, and she said, that baby is broken. And that Abby she just got it. Grace has always just got it. She's on another level, I think, from other kids, and she's always just understood Dad. And when Abby took her to the sidewalk to pray, Grace would be like, why are we here? And Abby's like, well, see her, she's a mommy, she's going in, and she's going to come out, and she's not going to have her baby anymore, and her baby's not going to be born. And just kind of trying to explain it to her in like as simple terms as possible. You don't have to talk about dismemberment. You don't have to turn it into a horror show, which, I mean, it is, that's the truth of the matter. But you don't have to like do that to them at such a young age. And I think also the best place to start is not on the death part, that abortion sells death, but just on the value of life. Start there and like talk about the stages of, zygote, embryo, all that kind of stuff. And we talk about, yes, they are alive. If they weren't alive, they wouldn't be growing,
Yep.
So kind of start in those terms when they're little, and give them the little fetal models. Those are great. Those are such little fun little teaching things. And Grace, when she started private school, she was the weirdo second grader that knew more about abortion than anybody else. And she brought the fetal models and kind of freaked some of the kids out with it. But
yeah, I think you and Grace did a Facebook Live a while back. Did talk a little bit about being at school and having her knowledge that she did, especially at a young age. I thought that was really cute, but also just telling that you guys have raised her in a way that you can talk about these things openly and with compassion, which is really important.
Right. Yeah. And you want to talk about moms, and like, once you're pregnant, you're a mom. Not once your baby's born, you're a mom. Like, motherhood begins in a different way. But like, you go through the morning sickness, and you go through all the growing, your body changing, and your milk coming in, and all that kind of fun stuff that we should be able to talk openly, because it's part of motherhood. Your body is changing for motherhood. And so, and with a man, we need to understand that, because we need to know how to support that and how to be there for our wives. And it's hard to understand, because say you get up every morning and you and your wife go for a hike every single day, and you're used to that routine. All of a sudden they become pregnant, and they're dog tired. Men have a hard time understanding, why don't you want to get up and do all the things we used to do? Because they're growing another human inside. So men get frustrated, I think, with not understanding the exhaustion that comes with your body getting its whole self to a baby, and the sacrifice the body makes, whether you like it or not. So men kind of have to change their routine with their wife, and it's a learning experience that you go through together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that is a much needed topic that, honestly, we could spend a whole nother topic talking about fatherhood and men today and embracing that. But I want to switch tracks a little bit to talking about Christianity in the pro-life movement. Now, one of the number one things I hear specifically from Christians is that, well, I'm pro-life, I wouldn't have an abortion, but I'm not going to judge other people. It's not my place to judge other people. And I know you and Abby have some strong feelings about, yes, we are called to judge people and judge actions. Tell me a little bit about how you approach the abortion issue in judgment.
Well, there's plenty of Bible verses that talk about judging, like we know them by their fruit, like of course we judge. And what's funny is people say you shouldn't judge. In that statement alone are judging. Like you're making a statement about judging. And so we're not condemning. We're not saying you're going to hell, but you do have to say there is such a thing as sin, and don't do that. And we can't support these sins. And if we really love someone, we will speak up and be like, hey, I think you're headed down a destructive path. Like you are separating yourself from Christ by these lifestyle decisions that you're making.
So essentially, when we're not judging people, we're not doing our Christian duty to actually call up and call out our Christian brothers and sisters and say, no, actually, this isn't Christ-like. We need to do more. We need to say more. And if we actually do believe in the best for our Christian brothers and sisters, call them to follow Christ.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of fluffy Christianity out there that teaches, well, there's no such thing as sin and you do you, which Jesus never said that, right? You know, when you think about the woman that was going to be stoned, and that's when he said, you know, like, do not judge, or like cast the first stone and all that. And, but he was also writing something in the sand. I think we all assume he was writing their little secrets, like, hey, I know what you were up to. And then by the time they all left, her accusers were gone. He turned to her and said, the last thing he said to her is, go forth and sin no more. Obviously, he was not saying, hey, it's cool what you did, no big deal. He was like, cut it out. And in every encounter Jesus had with someone, he met them where they were at. He did it with compassion and love, but he sent them away changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
He
absolutely.
always told them, like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. And when you leave here, this is what you need to do. And so I think we're called to do that as well. Paul talks about it in his letters. I mean, like, you can find it peppered throughout the gospel and throughout scripture everywhere. And so this idea that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I think what's happening is a lot of pastors, a lot of Joe Schmo guys that start these mega churches and even little churches, they want butts in the seats because that means money, right?
Yep.
They're trying to keep things afloat.
Growth.
So if you send a message that makes them feel bad, they may not come back.
Yeah. Well,
So
and my mother always told me growing up, and I don't know if I'm not saying that this states it perfectly, but my mother always did tell me growing up, and she taught us kids, it's not our place to condemn others. Only God can condemn, and only God can decide, the state of someone's soul. But it is our job to judge right from wrong, true from false, good from bad. And
right.
that is our place to judge that, because that's going to guide our life. If we don't judge one way or another, that's going to decide where we ourselves allow ourselves to go.
Right. Yeah. I think people are losing their identity because we're just not defining a Christ life, like how to lead that life. I mean, yeah, we're going to make mistakes and do these things, but you have to define sin and a way back from that. You know, you have to show what redemption looks like, show what forgiveness looks like, and talk about it's okay if you don't need to feel your shame, but like you start there and then you can start to heal. You know, I heard a really good interview with one of the Columbine, the Columbine shooting happened there.
Mm-hmm.
The kids turned to drugs and alcohol. And until all the way into adulthood, and he said, like, until I felt that pain and hurt, I couldn't heal from it. I masked it with drugs and alcohol because I didn't want to feel it, but I also never healed from it. And I never found redemption. So until I got rid of that, I had to get that out of the way. I had to feel it. I had to feel that pain and hurt. It wasn't even his fault. But until he could like move forward in life, you have to go through that. You have to experience your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to give you 2 rapid fire questions, and then we'll leave you with our final note, or let you leave our audience with your final note.
Okay.
First one is, how do you feel about the popular term today, dog mom or dog dad? Do you feel like it's cute and harmless, or do you feel like it degrades parents?
I think it started out as cute and harmless, but then it has become this thing where it's like, I'm a parent too. And I don't know. That's not the same parenting. It does not prepare you for parenthood. Like, yeah, you may get up a few times when you're potty training in the middle of the night, but it in no way does it prepare you for parenthood. It is not even equal. They're pets. They're dogs. Like, they come and go. They're more of a routine than they are. And I'm a dog owner and animal lover myself, but they do not compare to your children.
No,
You're not
not at
raising
all.
your dog up to go out and be teachers and lawyers and Christians and husbands and wives and to change the world. Your dog is never going to do that.
Okay, Doug, you've officially made it. Our friendship is sealed. We can be friends for life, because this
Okay.
is outside of very serious subjects, obviously, in the pro-life movement. This is my number one pet peeve with our culture today, is our elevation of pets to the status or above human status. And so, we can be friends now. So
Even like PETA people are like, you're pro-life, but you're okay with eating an egg? So yeah, like where do animals have their place in the pro-life movement? I'm like, next to my carrots and French fries.
Oh my goodness, that is a good line. I might have to steal that one. Next to my carrots and French
I
fries.
stole it from somebody else, from Sean Carney actually.
Okay,
So,
see, no, we're good. We'll just steal all around the movement. Okay,
yeah.
last question. This one's more serious, but we'll make it brief. What would you say, having seen the other side of the fence, the pro-abortion fence, having seen your wife be targeted by vicious pro-lifers, because some pro-lifers can be on the wrong side, if you ask me, of the pro-life movement, having been on that side, what do you feel like, if you could say just one thing, or you could tell others to say just one thing, what should we say to those who work as abortion workers, who work in the pro-abortion movement? What is something that we can say to them that both is truthful and honest, but without condemning them in their souls, or further inflicting harm and pushing them away from the pro-life movement?
I think one of the best things you can do is ask them questions about their work. Are you happy? Do you find fulfillment? Do you really think you're helping women or empowering women? Are you saying you're not strong enough to be a mom and go to college and find a career? Or are you saying like you can't do that? You can't have both. Like what was it, the Golden Globes, where Michelle Williams had that horrible, just cringeworthy, but it came from her heart. She was speaking honestly. And so I think, again, like, so if you were to approach someone like that, you can't just go in and be like, you're wrong, you killing your babies, you're a terrible person. Yes, that's the truth. Not that you're a terrible person, you killed your baby is the truth. But again, with that Christ-like mentality, you have to meet them where they're at, like, and then maybe just kind of get them to open up about it. Get to know people. I think what happened with Abby is the people that just prayed peacefully and quietly and would say, hey, how are you doing? And how's your day going? And the ones that just you saw it in the movie with the Mary Lisa character, and it wasn't necessarily Mary Lisa that did it in real life, but she was kind of a smushing of a lot of characters. But it was lots of people, men and women, that were just carrying on conversations with Abby and making her feel comfortable talking to them and letting them know you have a place to go and we will help you. And that's the whole point of Abby's ministry, is we can find you another job. When Abby left, she couldn't find another job because she had the stink of Planned Parenthood on her, because there's so much corruption and fraud and just the way they carry out their business. Nobody wants that bleeding into their business. And so even if they support abortion, they're like, Planned Parenthood doesn't do things on the up and up. We don't want that over here. And so Abby kind of has to help people find a new job and let people, hey, they are good people and they will work hard for you. So I think it's more about, again, meeting them where they're at and not yelling things at them, and not, you remind them, hey, there's life in there and there's something better for you. You kind of have to find the balance of like expressing truth and then telling them where to find, like, we're not going to judge you or treat you like less than. Because that's the other thing is we tend to like put them down, like, hey, I'm up here and you're down there. Why don't you come up to my level? The truth is we're kind of on the same level, and I just want better for you.
I love that. I just want better for you. That is a beautiful message to.
And it's not about being right. I think there's so many pro-lifers that are like, they just want to be right. They don't care if they save lives. They just care about being right about the subject. And I think there are a lot of people that we should be working our way out of a job, right? We should be like working our way away from the fences into ministries where we help women in crisis, because like there has to be a then what. If abortion goes away, there's still going to be women in crisis pregnancies, so we got to be taking care of them. So the pro-life movement doesn't go away, it just changes its direction.
I love that. Yeah, we're always the pro-love movement, and we're focusing, or we're
Right.
moving from abortion when once we've made abortion unthinkable, which I think will happen, hopefully in our lifetime, and then we'll move into just loving women through every stage, everything that they need. All right, so Doug, before we say goodbye, I just feel like there's so much more we could go over. So maybe we'll have you on again just to talk about all the other things we
Um,
couldn't talk about today. But I want people to know, where can they find you, both online, maybe email, whatever, wherever you best like to be contacted. Maybe if someone wants to bring you in for a speaking engagement. Congrats also, by the way. I heard you're speaking at a
yeah,
one
yeah. I'm gonna
in
shoes
Texas.
on the other foot for a minute. We'll see how it goes. I'm nowhere near the speaker Abby is. I think she's one of the best in the world, and I
Don't
am about.
underplay, don't undersell. But
Yeah.
where can people find you? Where can they reach you and get in touch with you?
Pretty much all my social media is Doug on Tap, which Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook are really the only three I have anything to do with. And then I have my blog, which I just haven't. 8 kids kind of takes away from writing time, and so I haven't been able to write as much, but I do write a lot on Facebook. And so if you want to find me, and I try to have a sense of humor about almost everything, very tongue in cheek. I think if we can't laugh at ourselves, then what are we doing? I do take some things seriously, and there are things I become impassioned about. And I do get into arguments with people, but I try to be as nice as I can, unless they're just too dumb.
No, I've seen you get some pretty vehement posts out there, especially when people attack your wife, or
Mhm.
there's some very satanic leaning. I wouldn't call them pro-life, but they would call themselves pro-life movements. I see you defend your wife, but you know what? It's an honorable defense. But
Those guys, I can't, even if you support them or if you're just friends with them, I just can't trust those people and want nothing to do with them. So, oh, and then I do have my messaging open on my Facebook page if you just want to have a private conversation with me, because sometimes people have questions that they don't want to have public, and I totally understand that. And sometimes I'll message people privately just to dig a little deeper in some of the things, because people do want to share and like just get things off their chest, and I'm there to do that until it becomes too overwhelming. If it takes away from my family life, I'll turn that off. But right now, it's still okay, so I am open to do that.
of course, and that is awesome. Thank you so much, Doug, for coming on. Thank you for what you're doing in your beautiful family and with your wife. And thank you. God bless you. You're amazing.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Hey there. So you're at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to ask you to please, if you haven't already, subscribe and leave a review. And if you've already done those two things and you're like, Lisa, I hear you say that every week, and I've already done that, what else do you want me to do? This is the time I would like to tell you what else I'd like you to do. No, I'm being serious though. Please share this with a friend, with a like minded friend, or maybe a friend who doesn't know much about the pro life movement or doesn't know much about the conservative movement. Maybe as an introduction, maybe as someone who is a tried and true conservative who you just feel like our personalities might resonate. Who knows? But I'm asking you to please take that next step and go ahead and share this with a friend or two or a dozen. I don't care. Actually, maybe 30. However you want. You be generous. You decide. All right. Thanks. Bye.